right, today I am going to show you how to build these IKEA style crates. One of these crates is made out of one 2x4x8 with just a little bit of waste, hardly any at all. And these are way more solid than the ones that you would buy in the store because they're all nice and glued together. We're going to show you exactly how to do that. And these are stackable. So the way that they're designed, you can stack them up several high because they lock together. These things are great. I'm building them right now because I got a pile of stuff to put away. I'm going to show you the build of this one. This is the prototype that I did first. There is a smaller version. So if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you all the dimensions for the smaller one, and stick around because I'm going to show you an alternative way to use the table saw that I'm finding to be easier than I did in the actual build. So stick around for that. All right, let's get to it. Okay, first things first, we're going to take our 2x4x8 and we're going to make it shorter so it's just easier to feed through the table saw. So first cut is just going to be at 36. Next cut is going to be at 24. And then this one, we're just going to go right in half. We're going to be trimming it later, so it doesn't matter. So this is a 3-footer, so we're going to go at about 18. All right, off to the table saw. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the table saw at 2.5 inches. And we're going to put all 4 of these through. It's a pretty dusty job, so I'm actually going to wear my mask, which I'm pretty much known for not wearing. I'm going to put these guys aside. We're going to keep one of these out as a bit of a push stick, as you'll see. Take one of our short ones, one of our 18-inch ones. And now we're going to set our blade height about there. I'm going to use this thin rip jig here. And we're going to cut this into 3/8 pieces. Okay, so this is how I'm going to set up. I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but this is how I do it. So I make sure that the edge of the blade here is at 3/8. And I'm just going to lock the fence in place. And I'm going to move this down here, lock that in place. And okay, I don't want it to be overly tight. This is just a crate. It's not fancy furniture or anything. Okay, so now I'm going to just go over until I'm just touching that. I'll lock the fence in place. That way the bigger part is going to be on the side of the blade, which is safer that way. Okay, so I'm just going to cut one piece off of this, and then I'm going to set it aside, and then I'm going to cut the rest of them, and then I'll move it over. This one's got to be set aside because this is kind of the oddball. I only need one out of this one. Wondering why I'm doing this, it's because we're using a pretty light board and we're doing a pretty thick cut here. When I was building the prototype, this a couple times wanted to fly up at me, so I made sure I straightened my fence because that was part of the problem. It wasn't perfectly straight, and now I'm kind of just doing that because then if it wants to, and I'm also not standing behind it because this is a little trickier than most of the table saw cuts I've done so far. Okay, so anyway, we'll take that one off. We're going to set it aside. I'm going to put these 3 through, and then we'll readjust for the next cut. Now I'm just going to move it over so I'm touching again. I forgot to use the paint stick for this because it's pretty thin there. Okay, so just because I'm using the 2x4 and it's a little uneven, a lot of these do come out to be almost exactly 3/8, but I'm just going to go through and make sure they're the same. So I'm going to take this out now. And I'm just going to take the fence and move it over to 3/8. That one, that one. Okay, that's the hard part. Probably one of the trickiest things I've ever cut on a table saw, so be careful when you do it. One more thing to do on a table saw. Okay, we'll just take these out of the way. We're going to take our pieces here that we have. Now we're just going to move it over to 1 inch. Okay, that's the majority of the waste right there. Okay, done with the table saw. Okay, so now we're going to take our 4 18-inch pieces and our 3 36-inch pieces, and we're going to cut them all at 17 1/4. So I'm going to measure over 17 1/4, and I'm going to use a stop block here because we have enough of them to justify it. Okay, now we're going to take our 3 2-foot pieces and we're going to cut these at 11 1/2 inches. We just got to cut up these guys. So I'm going to take the long one and I'm going to cut 4 at 8 5/8. So we're going to take our longer piece that's left here, and we're going to take one of these, make sure that they have the same width. That one doesn't. That one doesn't. Remember, those two came off of a different board. That's why they're slightly different width, but it doesn't matter for this. As long as we make sure these ones match. Okay, we've got 3 here at 10 3/4. Correction, 10 3/4 minus a smidge. How much is a smidge? Well, we'll go less than it. We'll go a 16th less. Okay, reason being we want it to have a little bit of play, so when we stack them, we don't want them to wedge together and have to pound them in. We want to have a little bit of play there. Okay, we got 3 pieces left. We're going to take these 2 because they are the same. Not that it matters for this. And we're going to cut these 2 at 15. Okay, and this last board here, we're going to cut 2 out of it at 8.5. Now, after all that, there's your 2x4. Okay, so here's all of our pieces. We'll see what they all do when we get there, but set these ones aside, set these ones aside. So we have 4 uprights. These are our bottom boards. So the bottom boards are the ones that are 10 3/4 minus 1, which is 10 11/16. Not a measurement I use frequently. So we're going to set these ones aside. Okay, so I'm just going to look, and that one looks pretty good. That one looks pretty good. I'm just looking for any that are noticeably not nice looking. Stamp on that one. We'll leave that one at the bottom. That one's not great. These are the 4 we'll use for the bottom. So we're going to put the nice side up. Now, when you're doing this, guys, just remember, it's a crate. I don't know how perfect you want the thing to look, but I'm just going to be stacking a bunch of stuff in and putting it in a storage room. So it's about function. I'm not going to make it hideous or anything, but I'm not going to waste a bunch of time measuring and making everything perfect. These are going to be a different dimension that way versus that way because of the way they went through the saw, and I wasn't going to make them perfect. Same reason. So I'm just going to make sure I have them all the same, okay? The heights are all the same. So the wider side is at the top and bottom. The skinnier side there, okay? So I'm going to space it out like that, relatively in the center there. Now I'm going to apply the glue. Okay, so I have my 1-inch brad nails. I'm going to take my first board, I'm just going to set it there, and I'll finagle it as I go here. Now I want to make sure that these bottom boards are inset a little bit because we want them to lock into the next crate. So we'll have a little bit of space around the edge, which is why we cut them a little bit short. Then do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to take the opposite side, do the exact same thing. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell, but as you can see, like I said, I've got a little bit of a lip around there. Okay, so all I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to space these out, just eyeball it. Okay, bottom done. So we are back. It is the next day. Camera died and I had to go to work. So here we are. Nice new day. It's still kind of cold, but not that cold. Okay, so now we're going to build the sides. We'll take 2 of our uprights, figure out which side we want to be facing the outside. Get these about the right distance apart like that. Okay, we're going to start with the bottom one. Okay, so when we do the bottom one, I'm going to get it relatively into the right spot here. And then we're going to just use this as a spacer because we're going to want it hanging down the width of that so that it's going to overlap the bottom. Okay, and then same thing on this side. Okay, and the next one we're going to do is the top one. And we're going to want the top overhanging 1/2 inch. So I've set my ruler here at 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to eyeball the center one. Okay, first one done. I'm going to do another one. All right, so there we got our 2 sides done. So I'm going to take the bottom. I'm going to take one of these longer bottom pieces. Doesn't matter which way it goes on. So I'm just going to put a bunch of glue on there. Does not have to be precise in here. Just make sure it's inside of the 2 bottom runners. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. Make sure it's flush with the outside because this is going to be structural. So we're going to identify the top and the bottom. So this is the 1/2 inch, this is the 3/8, so this is the bottom. It's going to go on like that. Okay, so we're going to run a bead of glue across here now. Make sure we're flush with the outside. I'm going to put our ends on. Okay, one last thing we're going to do for the structure. I'm going to take a number 6, 1¼ inch or 1 inch, whatever you have. Take 4 of them. Because this is the handle, I'm just going to pre-drill. Okay, so if you look at the ones from IKEA, they have 2 screws in each one. And the reason why they do that is because it's modular. You put it together after you get it. Or you can pay them $6 to do it for you. We built this all in one piece. The glue is going to hold it all nice and rock solid. So I'm just doing that just to give a little extra for the handles. But everything is really solid now. Now you're going to wipe off any of the glue that you don't want to have on there. I'm not going to worry about it too much because, like I said, I'm just using this for the back room here. Okay, if you're trying to make these kind of fancier and you want to stain them or whatever, make sure you sand everything down before you put it together. It's just much easier that way. Okay, last thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the handles in. Okay, so this is just a template that I made from one of the original ones that I did. I'm just going to use it. I'm going to relatively center it. The first way you do, you're just going to have to freehand it. Then just take the piece that you cut out, just use it as a template for the rest. So, yeah, you can make that as fancy as you want. I'm just going to sand it later on. Sandpaper's all buried over there right now. So you get the idea. All right, so I forgot one thing. We got our 2 little pieces here that you don't necessarily need, but we had the pieces left over from the 2x4. So all I'm going to do for these guys is I'm just going to put some glue. I'm going to pick the flat side because this is got a bit of a round over from the board there. So I'm going to pick these 2 sides here. Okay, and then I'm just going to jam it in there. And I'm just going to put some nails through the side. I'm not going to worry about the bottom because, like I said, it's just an extra. Okay, do the same thing on the other side. All right, there you go. Let it dry and you're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to give you some kind of tips and tricks as I kind of figured out going along here. I built one of these a couple years ago. It's been a while, and I kind of had to go through the whole procedure, and a lot of it you saw on camera there. So I'm going to explain to you exactly why I had the issue, and I didn't have the issue in the video. It was with the one I did before the video. Main thing was, those of you who've been following along, this is a new saw, and I did not straighten the fence. The dead of winter, I got it at Christmas time. I never even thought to straighten it, and that's why I was having problems. So that's why I used the board to hold down, which is not a bad idea at all, because with a 2½ inch blade sticking up, creating a lot of friction on there, and it was catching it and wanting to push it out. Straightening the fence helped with that a lot, but I'm going to show you an even safer way to do it. You're going to want a riving knife. So if you don't have a riving knife, you're going to have to be very careful with this. So this method is going to help you with that as well. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut my board to 2½, like we did with the first one. And I'm just using the scrap board here as an example. So there's our 2½ inch board. So now what I'm going to do is I'm only going to put the blade up to just over halfway. Okay, and also you saw me use this thin rip jig to set the fence. You don't need to do that. You don't need to have one of those. But everybody says that you're safer having the majority of the wood on this side. So rather than just set the fence to 3/8 of an inch and then cutting it that way, basically I'm going to take my board like this and I'm going to measure over 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the tooth. So if I'm going from the edge of the tooth, I get the board over 3/8. Once again, this does not have to be precise, okay? And I'm just going to set it like that, okay? So you don't need a thin rip jig to do that. And that's exactly 3/8, okay? So there we go. That is set. We got the blade just over halfway. So now I'm going to put it through. Okay, now that was much easier to do. So now I'm just going to take the board and I'm going to flip it over this way. And I'm going to put it through again. Yeah, I find this method to be much easier to do. The only thing is you're going to have to do a little bit of cleaning up with the sandpaper. If your fence is not straight, this is going to be much worse than this. This is pretty good because I straightened the fence, so it's just a little bit of a lip there. But yeah, do that if you're uncomfortable doing it the other way. We're back. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take the one that I built before. The glue's dry on this one. It's not dry on this one yet. I'm just going to throw it upside down here. I'm going to stand on it. You can see, nice and strong. The glue is going to make it rock solid. I don't think virtually any of it is end grain, so it's nice and solid. So a couple notes here. You saw the alternative way of using the table saw. I definitely like that method better than the other one. Just it's a lot less fighting with the blade, a lot less to worry about it kicking back on you. Keep in mind your blade curve might be slightly different than mine. Okay, so briefly let's talk about the cost on these. I'm not suggesting that you build these to sell. There's not a lot of money to be made off of them. But right now in Canada, if I were to order one of these from IKEA, it's $20 for one of these. And I can build 5 of them for that price. So that's pretty good. Definitely worth it if you want some crates. Get yourself set up and crank out a bunch of them. If you have a bunch of scrap 2x4s, these are great, 2x3s too. So you don't have to have a full length of a 2x4x8. Okay, so this is the glue that I use, just in case you're curious. This is a type 2, weather resistant, not weatherproof. Now I'm gonna give you the dimensions of the smaller one, which I don't wanna build because I don't need a smaller one. So the smaller one is only gonna be 2 high. It's only gonna be 3 wide in the bottom. So the dimensions for these boards right here are going to be 11.5. The dimensions for these boards right here are going to be 9. You need 7 of the long ones, and you're going to need 4 of the short ones. These upright boards inside are going to be 5.25. And don't just trust me on these measurements because I haven't done it. It's just a guideline. So 5.25 for these uprights. The bottom runners are going to be 8.25 minus 1. And then these bottom boards here are going to be 11 and 6. So those are the dimensions that you need to make the smaller one. All right, so if you like this, be sure to like it and subscribe. Help us get to 10,000. That'd be great. So now the editing guy is going to put something there and something there. So check those out too. All right, thanks for watching.